So, I'm going to do mostly the screen sharing. I'm going to walk you through some essential sites for learning and playing D&D. Also, if you look below, this is just a little image like gallery, a rotation of some of the characters I've made and continue to play in my games. Wonderful art that I've just basically taken off Google searches. Obviously, there's Conan the Barbarian. He is my barbarian Crom in a thing. Dervel, my paladin, is right down there. That is Finnan Leaf Whisper, who was my first character I ever created, the Ranger. That's Fallen El, who is a dark elf paladin warlock, which is fun. So I can get into that stuff later on, but I want to walk you through some of the intro stuff here first. So I'm just going to pretend as if no one knows what the hell D&D is, and we'll just walk through the basics. A lot of the stuff I'll be reading off of the sites and just trying to break down what that stuff means for you. Scarlett, thanks so much for the gift subs. Appreciate you, love. J Mondo, howdy, friend. Okay, so you see this site here, D&D Beyond. D&D Beyond is Dungeons and Dragons is owned by a company called Wizards of the Coast. There's a Dungeons and Dragons website. D&D Beyond is for everything kind of player related. It's all your resources. You can build a character, and your character sheet will be there. If you want to look up, an item or a spell or a monster, you can always find that stuff on D&D Beyond. I use it all the time. I use it every single time I play. So, they do a great job of welcoming people in and just kind of giving you primers and basics on D&D. So I'm just literally going to explore this kind of landing page they have here. D&D, cooperative storytelling game that harnesses your imagination and invites you to explore a fantastic world of adventure. Heroes must battle monsters, find treasures, overcome epic quests. That's basically what it is. It's set in a medieval fantasy setting. Typically, doesn't always have to be, but traditional D&D is set in kind of fantastical settings. You get everything from orcs and goblins and dragons to knights and castles and everything you can imagine in between, underground dungeons and the like. So the basic dynamic of D&D is you're going to have players and you're going to have what's called a dungeon master. The dungeon master is the man, the woman, the person who runs the show. Each player, that'd be you in this case, creates a character who is an adventurer. And you team up with other adventurers, your friends or your party members, whoever you're gathering around the table to play a D&D with. And then there's the role of the DM, the Dungeon Master. And the Dungeon Master is basically the storyteller, the referee. They have a good command of the rules. They tell you if that's going to work, if that's not going to fly. What kind of spell is needed for that, what kind of ability check is needed for that. But they also take you through the campaign, the story itself. They describe the setting. They tell you what you see when you enter a room, and they ask you, what would you like to do? And the party decides what they want to do, where they want to go, everything else. So it's collaborative. D&D is a super collaborative game. It allows for a lot of creativity, imagination, improv, decision making, you name it. So let's just read through this, what they have here. The DM, Dungeon Master, runs the adventures for the characters who navigate its hazards and decides which paths to explore. DM describes locations and creatures that they face. Players decide what they want their characters to do. Backing it up a little bit, D&D is a role-playing game. It's an RPG. That basically means you as a player create a character and then you immerse yourself in the role. You become the character for all intents and purposes. There's no right way to do it. There's no wrong way to do it. You can go watch, a show like Critical Role where you have very talented voiceover actors who role play especially well. They have a voice and they have developed the personality and they're kind of responding to things in real time. And that's a super high-end production and obviously very successful. But you don't need to show up with a voice, a Scottish accent or Irish or anything like that. You can just play it straight. You can say, my character does this. It doesn't have to be first person type stuff. So there's no wrong way to go, and it's wide open. It's as much fun as you want to have it in the way that you want to have it. But D&D is an RPG. Specifically, it's a tabletop RPG. Although with the pandemic, so much stuff has moved online that you know, you go and play on virtual tabletops, which is a program I'll show you later called Roll20, and that's where I run most of my games and play in most of my games as well. Do players decide what they want their characters to do? Then the DM determines the result of the adventurer's actions and narrates what they experience. So basically, you know, you walk in the room and here's what you see. What would you like to do? The players say, you know, we want to search the desk. Great. I tell you what you find. That's basically the breakdown, and that applies to monsters, that applies to exploration, that applies to people that you'd meet in town, how you want to interact with them, etc., etc., etc. And the DM just kind of, like I said, it's the referee, he's the rules lawyer, and he's the narrator of the kind of interactive experience that is D&D. So, this how to play section, and there it is, breaking it down. The DM describes the environment. Here's what you see. Players describe what they want to do, the desired actions, and then the Dungeon Master tells them what they see, what they find, what happens. And on we go. You can't play D&D without dice. The whole game kind of revolves around dice, which determines how successful an attack is. You know, if you dodge out of the way of something like that, or, you know, if you can check someone to see if they're lying. You know, a lot of these things come back to dice rolls and your character abilities. So the D20 is the most popular, most often used thing here to determine a lot of the stuff in D&D. So D20, but I mean, dice, lots of dice, all shapes and sizes. D20s, D12s, D10s, 8s, 6s, 4s. You can even get D100s for certain circumstances and situations. So take the die, the DM will tell you, roll the die, boom, you say, okay, that's a 20. And I tell you what happens. And then on we go. And you kind of adjust accordingly as the players. So that's it. We won't get into this until we build the character. Here's what we got. Other rules to remember, things to keep in mind. The DM is the referee. So, you know, I if I'm running a game, I make the final call on, you know, I'll allow that, or it doesn't work that way. And I kind of let you know there. That's it. In terms of actually getting into playing the game, there's three main components of D&D, and that is exploration. You know, you leave the city gates to go investigate a green dragon in the forest. So you're exploring, you know, you're on a walk, you're on a move. What do you encounter along the way? So you're hitting the road, basically. So exploration is a huge part. Another huge component of D&D is role play itself. You know, if I'm the tavern, you know, barkeep, and the party decides they want to come up and find out what happened last night, or if I've seen, you know, they've seen a certain shady character, you know, I play the bartender, and I have a list of information that I can give you when you ask the right questions, and you as a player, you fire away. So role play is a big part of D&D, and the third big component of D&D is combat. When you run into hostile creatures, monsters, this, that. Could be bandits on the road, you could be ambushed by goblins, you could be fighting that big green dragon if you find him in the forest. So combat is a whole other component of D&D. So those are the three main things: exploration, role play, combat, that you'll encounter in any given session of D&D that you play as players. Let's see, play your story, advantage, saving throws. We'll get into this stuff when we build a character. Yeah, there it is. Exploration, social interaction, combat. Which I just kind of walked through, creating a character. So those are the kind of nuts and bolts of what D&D actually is. And again, I'll show you what it's like to play D&D online on a virtual tabletop with maps and creature tokens and everything else, and how that all breaks down and works. I'll give you a quick intro to that once we create our rad ranger character. In terms of creating a character, and we'll walk through this step by step as we go, this is kind of the deal. The creation steps. You choose a race. Race could be anything, you know, think Lord of the Rings. Think Tolkien, dwarf, elf, human, But there's a ton in the D&D universe. There's, you know, are you a wood elf? Are you a high elf? Are you a, you know, dark elf, an elf that lives underground? You know, there's all different kinds, different types of dwarf in the dwarf category. Are you a halfling? Think Hobbit, Bilbo Baggins. Halflings are short and stout, and they're a race represented in D&D. But there's a ton more that you can choose from, and certain races have strengths and weaknesses to be aware of that could add value or not be a good fit for a certain class you want to play. Like a halfling is small and they're nimble and they're quick and they're dexterous. Would they make a good barbarian, which is, you know, a typically strong creature that likes to mix it up toe to toe with battles? Not so much. You know, their racial traits kind of favor stealth, you know, ambiguity, maybe using a bow and arrow, getting some shots off, getting out of dodge kind of thing. Class we'll get into. I kind of put a little poll in a stream a little while ago about some of the class options that are available to you. I'll go into more of those later, but it's fun. You've got your wizard, you've got your sorcerer, you've got your rogue, which is like a thief type character, your classic fighter, your barbarian, a paladin, which is a holy knight, ranger, which is kind of a someone from the wilds or, you know, more connected to the earth. The druid is also somebody associated with nature that, you know, also has like spell casting abilities. There's tons more, and they add more all the time. Those are kind of the basics of the classes you would choose from. Choose a class, determine ability scores. Now, this is fun. So, ability scores are kind of determine what your character is all about. What are you good at? Are you strong as an ox? You know, can you take a beating? Are you quick and nimble? Are you highly intelligent, aka book smart? That'd be a wizard. Are you very wise? You know, do you have a lot of wisdom, a lot of experience, that sort of thing? How charismatic are you? So those are the big six. Strength, constitution, dexterity, and those are all kind of physical attributes. But then you have charisma and wisdom and intelligence, and those are more the mental attributes your character could have. So we determine what's called ability scores, which basically means what is your character good at, what do they have a knack for, where are their skills based, and what are they kind of not so good at. You know, a barbarian is going to be, you know, think Conan the Barbarian, strong, mighty, is going to charge in there with a great axe or a long sword and start hacking away because they're strong, they're beefy, they can take a beating and they can dish out a lot of punishment. But do they have much use, you know, for a higher education? Probably not. They smash things, and that's kind of what they're called on to do. So that being said, it'll be easier to show you rather than just talk about it. So this is the Player's Handbook. The Player's Handbook is fantastic. It's kind of a requirement if you're going to play, excuse my ring light there, if you're going to play D&D, you need the Player's Handbook. It's a little thick, it's a little stout, but there are pictures. Not all homework is boring, so, you know, like you got all sorts of stuff. It's your encyclopedia, it's your Bible to how to play. The rules are in here, how to create a character's in here, all the options that are available are in here. So obviously, I'm a nerd for books, so I've got hard copies of most of the books. But obviously in D&D Beyond, you can have this stuff ready to go with a couple of clicks as well. So the people have spoken. We're building a ranger, so I thought I would just take a quick look in the Player's Handbook for a ranger. Let me check in with the chat though, make sure everything's cool. Yep. Okay, sounds good. Sounds like people are hearing me drone on about this nonsense. Right there is a ranger. That's my ranger. Finnan Leaf Whisper. Who's an archer. What have I missed? Anything? Okay, not much here. Yes, Scarlett, just to answer your quick question. Every character has all 6 of those attributes. You're just going to excel in some and not excel so much in another, and I'll show you how that gets determined. Anyway, what's this? I got some weird thing on my stream. Part of this overlay that crept in on me. Get out of here, bro. Okay, let's talk about the ranger, and then we're going to go here and we're going to build one. So, the ranger, rough and wild looking, a human stalks alone through the shadows of trees, hunting the orcs. He knows they're planning a raid on a nearby farm. Clutching a short sword in each hand, he becomes a whirlwind of steel, cutting down one enemy after another. Alright, that's some fun flavor stuff about the rangers. So look at it, it's giving you kind of a breakdown. Here's what a ranger is all about. They're deadly hunters, warriors of the wilderness, independent adventurers. You know, rangers kind of go alone. Maybe they have an animal companion, but they're very comfortable in the wild, in not so much in the cities, that sort of things. So creating a ranger, this kind of breaks down what they're about, and starts to give you a quick overview of their skills and abilities and what you can kind of expect as you go. So first thing to note is when you create a character, every character starts at first level. All right, so you're new in the world, you're a newly minted hero, you're an adventurer looking to get out in the world and mix it up and get some experience under your belt. So there's a progression. You know, as you fight more monsters, as you complete more quests, as you explore more areas, you'll gain what's called experience points. When you accrue enough experience points, you go to the next level, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and so on. And every time you do that, you become stronger. You learn more abilities. Maybe you can cast bigger, better spells. You get stronger, you hit harder, or you can take more damage. And that's how this D&D kind of progresses in that way. But you'll also be facing stronger monsters as you go. So there's a curve there. All right, we don't have to get into this so much until we build the characters. So let's go here. Lottie, you've been very generous on this stream. Pick a name for the ranger. I want you to name the ranger. And once we do that here, let me just we don't have to do that, we don't have to do that. Skip that, skip that, skip that, skip that. Modifiers top, public, home group content, radical. All right, Lottie, what do you got? What do you got, Lottie? Emmanuel Nar, what's going on? Welcome to the stream. All right, I'm gonna name Charlotta. That's what I'm gonna do for Lottie. All right. Okay, so here we go. We're talking about race. I'm gonna keep this simple, and as you can see here, there's a ton of different races to choose from. You know, you got your elves and your half-orc and your halfling and your humans and this and that. There's some fancier ones that kind of go outside of the typical traditional Tolkien Lord of the Rings subset of races. Gnomes, it's kind of fun. But we're going to go with an elf because wood elves make fantastic rangers. Magical people of otherworldly grace. As a wood elf, you have keen senses and intuition, and your fleet feet carry you quickly and stealthily through your native forests. Here we go. Wood elf skin tends to be copperish in hue, sometimes with traces of green. Hair tends towards browns and blacks. Blah, 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 blah. And this is all flavor. You can obviously customize any character you want, any way you want to. Cool thing about elves, they can see in the dark. Dark vision is a very, very important skill to have in D&D. If you're creeping around in a cave, if you're creeping around in some sort of crypt or dungeon below ground, there's probably not going to be a lot of light. So the ability to see somewhat through darkness is good. It also keeps your party stealthy and silent and not detectable, which means you can get the drop on some bad boys. Dark vision, keen senses. You have proficiency in the perception skill. I'll go into that later. Fey ancestry. So elves originate from fairies, the Fey in D&D's world. So, you know, the Fey creatures, the fairies, the elves have certain kind of racial traits that don't allow them to be charmed or put to sleep by magic, which is pretty cool. It's super handy. Elves also don't need to sleep the typical 8 hours a day, and we'll get into those mechanics later. Resting. Adventurers need to rest. They can't just go for months on end with no sleep. So we'll talk about that mechanic as we go. Elves are cool in that they only need to basically meditate for 4 hours, and that qualifies as what I would need as a human for 8 hours to kind of recover their skills and heal and everything else. So they've got a little extra bump to their wisdom. They're wise people of the woods and nature. Also because they have elf weapon training, so they know how to use a long sword, short bow, and longbow. And we'll look into that later. Fleet of foot. They're nimble creatures, so they can move 35 feet. And I'll describe how movement works later. And then they have an ability here that kind of lets them camouflage themselves easier than maybe other races do, just because they are so used to being outdoors and in the elements. So we're going to go with the wood elf. That picture is not flattering. We'll change that picture later. All right, so here is what we're going to enjoy as a wood elf. So we are building a wood elf. Let me make sure. That's right, Blue Fairy Fae. You know about the Fae. It's in your name. Okay. So here we go. Dark vision. So basically what this means is you can see in the dark. If it's complete pitch black, you can kind of see it as if it's black and white, gray, sort of dim. And so it tells you how far you can see. 60 feet. Dark vision you can see at night, basically. Keen senses, you are proficient in the perception skill. So basically you're going to come across this term when you're playing D&D and building a character called proficiency, where it's just kind of like, can you handle that? If you're a wizard who's not very strong, can you hold a massive two-handed great axe? Probably not. That's not what you do. You're kind of probably more in the slight, fragile type. You're accustomed to holding a book and maybe reading spells out of it. So proficiency basically means it's a skill or a weapon or a type of armor that you're comfortable wearing. You've got training in it, or it's a skill that you're good at naturally. Fey ancestry, we went through that. Trance, 4 hours asleep. Ability score increase. Wisdom increases by 1. Is that all I get? How's that all I get? That can't be right. We'll figure that out later. Fleet of foot. Mask of the Wild. All right, cool. So there it is. We're on to class. We're choosing a ranger. So let's go. So this is going to start to break down the ranger class for you. A warrior who combats threats on the edges of civilization. Here's their primary abilities for a ranger. Dexterity and wisdom. And we'll break that down there too. And then rangers can also be a bit on the strong side. We'll tell you what this means. So here's some abilities that they just kind of come with the ranger at level 1. I won't go into these too much in depth until we kind of build this character out completely, but it kind of gives you the rundown of like, you're going to play a ranger, here's what you can expect as you go, but we're choosing it, we know we are. So here we go, level 1. Now, hit points. This is basically, here's how D&D works. Like I told you, combat is a big part of D&D. It's actually my favorite part because it's like kind of a really fun chessboard, and there's strategy and tactics to combat, which are awesome. And I live for that part of D&D. I love that. So everything works off of hit points. So every character, every monster, anything that's basically alive, or even the undead, they have hit points. Basically, you start with a number, and if you get whacked with a short sword and you go to 0, you're unconscious, or if you're a monster, you're dead. So hit points basically determine how much damage you can take before you drop. And you guys see me stream Call of Duty and whatever else, and that's it. Once I take a bunch of bullets to the face, I'm dead and I'm in the gulag. So it applies the same way here, but it's called hit points. So that's a really important concept to know for D&D. The ranger is somewhat stout, so they're starting with 10 right now, but the way we tweak ability scores, we'll see how that might shift a little bit for us. Proficiency. So again, proficiency basically means, how handy you are with something, whether that's a skill or a weapon or an armor or whatever else. So we see with the ranger here, you know, they can wear light armor, medium armor, they can rock shields if they want, you know, simple weapons, martial weapons. Saving throws is another concept I'll get into here, and skills. And they kind of give you a choice of skills that you can be proficient in as you build out your character. Animal handling, athletics, insight, investigation, nature perception, stealth, and survival. So, knowing what I know, stealth is awesome for a ranger, and that's the ability to basically sneak up on people, and I'll go into that later. We'll also go into, what do they have? Perception. What? Where's perception? Are you serious, right? Oh, it already comes with it. Okay. Let's see. Investigation. Survival. Survival is a skill, you know, whether you're looking for food and water in the wild, or you're trying to track something or an enemy, or like look at footprints and determine which way an enemy or an animal, you know, went. Survival basically means how good are you out in the open? How good are you out in the wild? Kind of thing. So we'll go with survival, and then just, you know, for craps and giggles, let's do, I don't want to do nature, that's lame. We'll do animal handling, and I'll break that down later. Favorite enemy, what do you guys want? So basically a ranger's pretty cool, and so they have this ability called favorite enemy. You have significant experience studying, tracking, hunting, and even talking to a certain type of enemy. And there's all sorts of classifications of enemies, and this kind of gives you a bit of a rundown of some of the classes of monsters that you'll face. Dragons, you know, beasts, you know, bears, wolves, things like this. Celestials are kind of angelic creatures. Elementals, fire, water, you know, wind, stone, this sort of stuff. Giants, monstrosities, plants, undead, you know, your zombies, your vampires, your whatever else. So you kind of get a range of bonuses based on your favorite enemy, the enemy that you've studied your whole life to defeat. So let's go with beasts, and then it gives you a free language. Actually, undead's fun. Undead's the best. There's so many undead everywhere, zombies and ghouls and all sorts of nonsense. But let's pick Dwarvish. It gives you a free language. We're going to learn Dwarvish. Natural explorer. This is pretty cool. So being a kind of warrior from the wild, you can kind of pick a terrain that you're very comfortable and familiar in. And you have all sorts of bonuses to exploration and stuff like this when you're in your favored terrain. So let's just go with forest. It's a wood elf, for God's sakes. So you can move faster through the forest now. You can, you know, you can sneak along quietly. You can find twice as much food. You can track other creatures easier, you know, in the forest, because I've chosen forest. So this stuff's pretty cool. So this is just level 1. So okay, let's get into the nuts and bolts. Yes, Baron-Zabari. Quite often rangers can look like the typical Legolas from Lord of the Rings, Orlando Bloom's character, and that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make her an archer, but it's cool because we'll get to fighting styles in a minute. But first, we're gonna do ability scores. This is where it gets fun, and I'll break these down for you once we find them. So you've got a couple of methods for generating. If you want to keep things simple, it's standard array. I won't get into that. I just think for the sake of a stream, we're gonna roll some dice, because I think that's gonna be wicked fun for y'all to sit through, and then we're gonna determine what numbers we place to what abilities and what that means. So let's do this. So typically you would have 3 sets, okay, and that's what we're gonna roll. We're gonna roll 3 sets right here. Let's go. All right, so let's roll. And this is what's fun about the virtual tabletop, is you'll have dice flying across the screen, which is cool. All right, so the way this works is you roll 4 d6s. So again, the d6 is the 6-sided die. It's the standard 6-sided die. And so you roll 4 of these things, and you take the 3 highest. Higher numbers are better when it comes to ability scores. Typically, higher rolls on any die are better. outside of certain given circumstances. The higher you roll, the better chance of success. That's just kind of 1 being the lowest, 20 being the highest. The closer you get to 20, it's usually going to work out much better for you. If it's a D6, 1 is very low. Typically a 6 is going to work out a lot better for you there too. So that first set is 15 total. Notice how I got my pink fuzzy dice rocking here. Yeah, you can have customizable digital dice. And it's just cool. All of it's cool. All right, we got a 16. That's effing great. 12. Okay, we're rolling pretty good because there's a maximum of 18 that we can get, I believe. But right now we've got some strong double-digit numbers. Ooh, that's shitty. Oh, 6. That's not good, and I'll show you why. God, that's painful. 7. Good lord. So this is bad. There's so many great high numbers, but the low numbers are really low, and I'll show you why that can be crippling. But let's get over here first. We'll roll a second set. We've got an 11. We've got a 14. Those are pretty good. 11. All right. We'll see. We'll see what happens. 11. Jeez, 11. Let's go 17. That's pretty solid. All right. This is a strong contender. It leans more towards average, but there's not cripplingly low numbers here, and I kind of like it. Okay, let's go. 11. Is my computer broken? 13. Great. 15. Solid. 16. Let's party. I like it. 14. This is good. This is good. We're going to have to go with this one. Wow. All right. That's pretty good. We're going to do this. We're going to apply these ability scores if I can figure out how to do that. If I can figure out how to do that. How do I do it? Okay, so here's what gets fun. We're going to crank our dexterity, and I'll show you why. Dexterity is going to be kind of the primary offensive stat of an archer. You know, it's longbow. It's how quick you move, that sort of thing. When you fire a bow, it's more based on your strength, dexterity than it is brute force, at least in the way D&D breaks it down. So dexterity is going to be a very important statistic and ability score for the kind of character that we're building, this ranger that's going to use a bow and arrow. Another one that's pretty important is constitution. The higher constitution you have, the more hit points you have. Basically, the more of a beating you can take and withstand punishment. The higher constitution, you'll get higher hit points, which means you have a better chance of staying alive longer and you can take more damage. So that's a really important one. Wisdom is pretty important, and you'll see why. Some of the wisdom ability. Wisdom is kind of breaks down into, you're not exactly, it's not book smarts, it's street smarts. How observant are you? How aware are you of your situations and the things going around? How much experience do you have? That translates into wisdom, and I'll give more of a breakdown into that later. Let's go with strength. Strength is not bad. She's not going to use strength for her weapon attacks, but strength is a good overall ability to have. It's better to be strong than not when you're going to go face dangerous things. So the other two are just kind of flavor. We'll make her charismatic. We'll give her a 13 in the charisma, and the intelligence doesn't really factor into what a ranger does, so we can make that the lowest, but 11 is still pretty solid. So let's apply these here, and this is fun. So we're gonna have pretty cool scores. So this is how it breaks down. So the wood elf and the ranger have a natural bump to their dexterity and wisdom scores. So, you know, I plug the 16 in for the dexterity, but the wood elf is naturally dexterous and nimble, so they get a racial bonus of a +2. So the total score is going to be 18. And this results in a modifier, and I'll explain what that does later. So we've got pretty solid scores all around. She's fast, she's nimble, dexterity. She's pretty stout, constitution. She can take a licking, keep on ticking. Strength, pretty strong. She's very wise. We've got the 16 in the wisdom score here. Very, very wise. So that befits a hero that would be living in the woods, outdoors, constantly having to be observant and aware of her surroundings. So that's a really great score for her. Charisma is basically, charisma is how likable are you? How do people respond to you in social situations and stuff like this? So she's pretty likable. And intelligence is like, you know what? She ain't got a PhD, but for sure she's got a bachelor's. She's got a bachelor's in adventuring. So pretty solid build. This is actually a great character. I'd be very happy if this is my starting stats for a ranger that I was about to start playing in a campaign. So bear with me. We're going to, let's find a picture. Let's find a picture. Where's my Charlotta? Charlotta? I don't know. That looks good. There she is. There she is. All right. This is a fun part. You can kind of flavor your character with what's called a background. And there's a crap ton of options. But they give you kind of extra set of skills, and it's kind of fun for your backstory, for the flavor of your character. Where'd you come from? What have you studied? This, that, whatever. So there's a ton here. Holy crap. What does a folk hero do? This is pretty fun. Let's go with folk hero. You come from humble social rank, but you are destined for so much more. Already the people of your home village regard you as their champion, and your destiny calls you to stand against the tyrants and monsters that threaten the common folk everywhere. I like it. Folk hero. Folk hero. Village superstar. Going off in the great big wide world. Acrobatics is a great skill because it relies on dexterity, and she has a very high dexterity score. And lastly, I think she has perception. She's got a lot of good skills. She's got a really high charisma score. So let's go with persuasion. Let's make her a sweet talker. And then there's, more flavor stuff like, did you want to specialize in a tool? I don't know. Let's go with woodcarver's tools. Maybe she likes to whittle and make animal figurines in her spare time. All right. Fantastic. Here we go. And you can build out her character description, but if you find some fantastic art or hire one of the endless amazing artists out there to kind of create the art for you, you don't really need to describe this stuff in writing. You can let the picture do the talking. So one of the final steps is, and building out a character is we got to get an inventory for him. What's your starting equipment? What are you starting out with? And it's not going to be sexy. It's not going to be fun. Hopefully, as you grow and experience and go on many, many more adventures, you'll find chances to get magical items and more powerful weapons and stuff like this. But you do get to start with some basic stuff. Start with scale mail. We're going to want Charlotta to be stealthy, creeping around the woods, that kind of thing, staying sort of hidden, trying to get the jump on people, kind of that classic like ambusher. She's kind of built for that right now, so we're going to go with leather armor, which doesn't offer a lot of protection, but it does help keep her quiet rather than clanking around in heavy, chunky armor. 2 short swords, just in case things get up close and personal, but give her 2 short sword. Explorer's pack, and that's got your basic, backpack, bedroll, mess kit, torches, rations, water skin, 50 feet of rope. Just handy dandy stuff if you're out and about. And then of course we've got the longbow and a quiver of 20 arrows. We already did the artisan's tool here. You also come with a shovel, an iron pot, common clothes, and 10 gold pieces. All right. She's ready for anything. Oh, weird. Why did it do this? It doubled everything. Ugh. That's the lame. Okay. Let's wear our leather armor. Let's wield our longbow. Let's wield our short sword. Those will be the main weapons. Yeah. Cool. So, we're getting pretty close to wrapping up here. Here we go. So D&D Beyond's awesome because once you build this character, you can then, I'm going to drop this here. It's a little bit hard to see this, so I'm going to go into Underdark mode. I'm just going to try to tweak the backdrop here so it's easier to see a little bit. Give me something Give me some dark. Ooh, oh my, what's that? Ooh, that's green. That's fun. And this is fine. I mean, you just kind of build out the way your character sheet looks and stuff, and obviously it's all very optional, but that's kind of fun. Let's go purple. Ooh, that's nice. What's this one? Oh, I kind of like this. We're gonna go with this. So that might make it a little bit easier to see, although the text is sort of tiny. I will try to highlight and let you know what's really going on here. So this is the character sheet. This is our character, Charlotta. Before I dive in, let me scroll through the chat and see if there's any questions here. I see Rachel wants to use this character already. I don't blame you. Yo, Muffin Top, what's up? Emmanuel Nar, what's going on? I hope you're all enjoying this so far. This is fun. I gotta be honest, it's, if anyone plays fantasy football, like the most fun of the entire fantasy football league you're in is gonna be like drafting your team. Like it's the most fun, and to create your own character any way you want for any reason you want with all the options you have. Like it's kind of like the most exciting part of getting started in D&D. We have built a bitchin' female wood elf ranger right now. So here's what we're gonna do. So I walked you through this ability score thing, right? So let's break this down. D&D Beyond's very cool because it just kind of gives you shortcuts to everything. Like things you would have to flip a million pages for in this, it's like you can just do it online and it's so fast. And it's very handy for teaching people how to do it on stream. So she's got a score of 14 strength, okay? Now you're seeing that her total score here is 14. And she's got +2, and that's called the modifier, and I'll show you what that means. Strength measures bodily power, athletic training, and the extent to which you can exert raw physical force. Sometimes when I'm a DM, let's just say Charlotta is chasing an enemy, and they run inside a cabin, and they kind of like try and shut and bar the door behind them, and she's trying to charge through to get after her quarry. And she might say, I want to run through the door and burst through it with power and keep on them. And I might say, okay, roll me a strength check or roll me an athletics check, which is something tied to her strength. Let's see how capable you are of just running up and smashing that thing down with your shoulder. And we'll let the dice determine if you're successful or not. And so this is kind of stuff that strength does measure. A lot of weapons. As you can imagine, if you're using a dagger, those things are quick and they're very light, so being dexterous is going to serve you better there, at least in the D&D world as well. But a lot of weapons rely on brute strength. How hard can you swing something to do damage, rather than how fancy are you with getting in there quick and finding a weak spot. So this is kind of what strength breaks down to. And you've got your ability scores right here. Okay, and this is basically her makeup, right? This is what she is all about, in what ways and how. Down here, you see this column here. These are skills, okay? So if she wants to try to pick a lock on a door, I would ask for a skill check. If she wants to try and run and jump over a river or off of a bridge, or climb up a wall, I would ask for skill checks. If she wants to try and persuade, the tavern keeper to let her stay in the inn for free, I would say roll me a persuasion check. So these are all the skills, okay? But all the skills tie into the core abilities of the character, the 6 broad categories here. And they determine how specialized you are in the skills that fall under their umbrella. So this is cool. So you look at strength. She's got a 14 strength +2 modifier. So basically, she's pretty strong. She's way above average strong. And so, if she wanted to climb a cliff wall, if she wanted to try to knock something down, if she wanted to try and push an enemy or a character over, or jump a long distance, anything that's kind of, swim up current, in a raging river. Anything that involves pushing, pulling, jumping, lifting, that sort of stuff, that's going to tie into strengths and more specifically your athletics. So let's just say she does want to try and climb a wall. She's going to have to use brute strength to kind of pull herself up. I would say roll me an athletics check. And so basically she would do that. She would click here and do. All right, so this is what you see. She rolled a 19 out of a d20, okay? But if you look here, athletics is a +2. Her strength, here's a +2, right? Her strength overall is 14. Having a score of 14 is going to give you a +2 modifier. If you have, so this is the way these skills kind of break down. You'll see, for intelligence, she's got a 0. Like, she doesn't get any extra bonus when she does anything intelligence related because she's not wicked smart. She's not a dummy, but she's not super smart. So this is kind of the tier that D&D breaks these ability scores into. If it's a 10 and 11 is going to say, you're average. You're not the smartest, you're not the dumbest when it comes to intelligence. So, you don't get a bonus for any skills or ability checks that require your intelligence. If you want to kick it up a notch, if you have a 12 or a 13 in any category, like she does in charisma, you're more charismatic than the average person. So we're going to give you kind of a little +1 bump to anything you do that's charisma related. Trying to intimidate somebody, trying to persuade somebody to get what you want, trying to lie to them, deceive them, that sort of thing. And now if you've got a total score of 13 or 14, like she does in strength here, or I'm sorry, what is it, 14 and 15? How does it break down? 14 and 15, yes. So 14 and 15, her constitution and her strength, she's got a 15 here, she's got a 14 here. So she's stronger and she's more stout than the average person. And the higher your score is, the higher the little modifier, the little bonus, the little bump you're going to get to anything strength related, constitution related. And you'll see that reflected here. So her strength is a 14, it's a +2 modifier. Athletics, as you can see, it says STR. That's a strength-based skill check. So there's that +2. And so she's going to have a little bump because she's stronger than average. And so that's kind of what she was. So she rolled a 19. We got to add the +2, which is why you see the 21. That's an excellent score. As a dungeon master, I kind of assess, well, how hard is it? Has it been raining? Like, was that wall completely slick? Is she have a good chance to fall on her ass and fall off the ground after 10 feet of climbing? So I have a number in my mind. And there's a typical rule. If it's something easy to accomplish, I'll set it at 10. If you roll 10 or higher, you did it, succeeded. If it's kind of like a little bit more challenging, we'll set it at a 15. So if you roll a 15 higher, if it's really hard, I'm going to set it at a 20. So even if this was really hard, she rolled the 19, she got a +2, that's 21. She passes. She's climbing that wall. And that's how the DM player dynamic works. Player says, I want to do something. I would say, okay, if you want to climb that wall, it's going to rely on your strength. Give me an athletics check. And you roll the dice. And if you have any bonuses, you add the bonuses to it to try to get that number higher. I've got the difficulty number in my mind. And if you beat it, tie it or beat it, you succeed. And on we go. So D&D can be very, very complicated, but at the end of the day, it's like football can be a very complicated sport, but really one team just needs to move the ball from here to here. And that's kind of how you can simply look at D&D if you want to do that. You roll dice, you add bonuses, the DM says the number you got to beat is here. Did you beat it or not? Did you succeed or fail based on what you rolled? And that's how D&D typically works, in I don't know how to explain it, in an elementary fashion, so to speak. So that's pretty fun. So we walk through strength. Hopefully this is making sense to people. I know I'm going fast. There's a lot to cover. And obviously the more you play, the more this stuff just becomes second nature here. Let's move on to dexterity. So like I said before, a wood elf is naturally, dexterous. The ranger character, to be an archer, requires a lot of dexterity. She's got a jacked dexterity score. Like, this is very good. It's almost as high as you can get, for a starting character. And that's a very good thing. And we'll see how that plays out and why it's good. But, walking it back, this is what dexterity is. It measures agility, reflexes, and balance. And that's what you think. And dexterity, it's just like, can you roll that coin across your fingers? Can you, do this with your hands? you know, that kind of thing. Agility, reflexes, balances, and that's kind of something associated with like elves, you know, being lithe, limber, agile creatures and stuff like that. So it makes sense. So, you know, in terms of dexterity-based skills, and like I said, she's got an 18. So if you're in like the 18, 19 number, you're going to get a +4. Like that's a huge bonus. So basically, you're going to get a big bump when you try to do anything dexterity related, whether that's firing your bow and arrow or trying to nimbly dodge something or whatever else. And you'll see that reflected in her scores here. But as far as like dexterity checks, so a lot of these, some of these skills here that you see are rooted in dexterity. And you can tell because it says, they make it easy, it's DEX. So, you know, acrobatics is a dexterity-based skill, okay? If you remember in the character sheet, we got to choose some of the skills she was proficient in. Like, I'm really good at this. And that kind of gives you an extra little bit of bump. So you've got this box here that says proficiency bonus. So basically anything you are skilled in, like yeah, I have training with a longbow. Okay, you have a proficiency bonus of +2. Anything you do with a longbow, you can add +2. Okay, and so she's also proficient in the acrobatic skill. So that's where this number is coming from. This +6. She's got a proficiency bonus of +2, which is, here's the proficiency box checked for her athletics. So it's +2, and right here, +4. That's how you get +6. So anytime I have her roll, let's say she wants to, you know, a dragon is breathing fire in her direction, and she sees it coming, and she has a chance to dodge and roll out of the way and avoid damage. And that's what she's trying to do. I say, roll me an acrobatics check. Let's just see how nimbly you can get away and avoid the incoming threat. And I'll say, let's set it at a 15. She gets a 15 or higher. This is a big dragon. There's a big cloud of flame. Let's just set it at 15, see what she rolls. So she rolls her acrobatics check. All you do is click that box. All right. So she rolled the 13, but she gets to add +6 here. So it's a 19 total. She beat my 15. She rolls away from danger, and she comes out unscathed. So again, that's kind of how D&D breaks down. It's all at once complex and fun, and you can get into tons of deeper strategies and layer this out. But, you know, quite simply speaking, that's what it comes down to. It comes down to dice rolls and determinations, and everything else is just open-ended and free play and imaginative and creative. But the dice almost always determine the outcome. All right, so Lady Macbeth, thank you for the bits. For those of you tuning in, we're just doing a little intro to D&D walkthrough. We just built a badass female wood elf ranger character, and I'm kind of walking through her attributes right now so people have a better understanding of who she's about and what she does. We just talked about dexterity, but some of the other dexterity-based skills you can see here is acrobatics, which she's very good at. Stop doing that. There we go. Sleight of hand. And this is kind of manual trickery. Are you trying to plant a document on somebody? Are you trying to lift their coin purse? Are you trying to, you know, do something, you know, creative with your hands, you know, like this sort of shit, and pull it off? This is what sleight of hand check would require. And so that's a dexterity-based skill. Stealth is a very important one, and we made her quite a stealthy character. As you can see, if we scroll down, she's quite stealthy. That's a +6. That's pretty good. So stealth is basically how well can you keep hidden? How well can you sneak up on somebody? Conceal yourself from enemies, slink past guards, slip away without being noticed, sneak up on someone without being seen or heard. So that's what stealth is. Stealth is great. It's a great skill for dexterity-based characters. You know, to be going around undetected, to get the jump on your enemies. That's a really huge skill. That's why we gave her light, quiet armor. But that plays into her high dexterity score very, very well. So that's another dexterity-based ability. And those are the big three in terms of dexterity. Stealth, acrobatics, sleight of hand, card tricks. So she's a badass with a dex. Let's move on to Constitution. So Constitution measures health, stamina, and vital force. So there's not really any ability checks here that are geared towards Constitution, but Constitution checks come up a lot. You know, there's a lot of conditions, enemies that will try to do things that tie you up, that restrain you. You know, roots they summon from the ground that try to pull you down to the ground, and you have to make a Constitution check to see if you can break free and stay on your feet and stuff like that. Other DM might call for a Constitution check when you try to accomplish tasks like the following: hold your breath, march for hours without rest, go without sleep, survive without food or water. If you want to chug a beer, let's see how well you handle that beer. That'll tie into your Constitution score. But it also, like I said, Constitution ties into your hit points. She has 12 hit points, as you can see right here. And that's because she's got a pretty high Constitution score. So that's going to give her more hit points in terms of that. Also, when your character goes to 0 hit points, you don't just die outright necessarily unless certain conditions are met, but you do go unconscious and you go into what's called death saving throws. So death saving throws is basically like, how bad is that wound? You know, and as the next like minute goes by, you know, are you going to succumb to that wound before someone can help you up, or will you be able to just recover and just stay passed out until you're back up on your feet? And that often involves your Constitution. How well are you going to recover from something like that? So Constitution, we covered that. She's pretty con heavy with a +2. That's a great number for her. Intelligence, again, you know, her skills, it's like the longbow. It's shooting enemies from afar. It's being out in the wilds. And the wilds requires more wisdom than it does book smarts. So she's not super intelligent. She's got an average intelligence, but she's got a +0. Intelligence in general measures the mental acuity, accuracy of recall, and the ability to reason. You know, useful to have, of course, but not completely necessary for the character that we're trying to build right here. When it comes to intelligence checks, come into play when you need to draw on logic, education, memory, or deductive reasoning. And so we've got a bunch of skills that are tied to intelligence. Arcana measures your ability to recall lore about spells, magic, items, symbols, traditions, planes of existence, etc., etc., etc. So anything kind of magical or ethereal that you come across, I would ask for an Arcana check. It's kind of like, oh wow, this is a really cool looking dagger. Does it have any magical properties? I'd be like, roll an Arcana check. Let's see if you can determine if it's magical or not. It's not going to really apply to our ranger here. History is also tied to intelligence. You know, if you're book smart, you would have read books, you would have known about historical figures and kingdoms of yore and blah, 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 blah. Investigation is a very valuable intelligence school. Look around for clues and make deductions based on those clues. You know, try to find a hidden object. Discern the appearance of a wound, what kind of weapon dealt it, weakest point in a tunnel that could cause it to collapse. So when you're in investigation, basically investigating is like getting up close and personal. It's kind of like, you know, that treasure chest is locked. You know, have I seen that kind of lock before? Would I be able to figure out how that lock works? So you could pick it if you wanted to get in it. And I would say roll an investigation check. She'd be like, oh, it's a 3-tumbler lock. You know, on a high roll, I would give you more clues on how to solve the problem because you got up close and personal and investigated it. Nature measures your ability to recall lore about terrain, plants, animals, the weather, natural cycles. Obviously, religion is tied to intelligence. Recalling lore about deities, rites, prayers, holy symbols, the practices of secret cults, stuff like this. So these are all intelligence-based. She doesn't have anything really intelligence-based because that's not the way that we built her, and that's not the best use of her skills. So we're going to move on to wisdom. Wisdom is really high for her. It's very important as a sort of a warrior out in the wild. She's got a +3. Her total wisdom score is 16. It's very high. She's well above average in terms of her wisdom. It's a very useful ability score in general and for her. Wisdom reflects how attuned you are to the world around you and represents perceptiveness and intuition. And this is a really, really great skill for her and what she does. A wisdom check might reflect an effort to read body language, understand someone's feelings, notice things about the environment, or care for an injured person. So there's a lot of skills here that are tied to wisdom. Animal handling. She's proficient. We made her a good animal handler. When there's any question whether you can calm down a domesticated animal, keep a mount from getting spooked, or intuit an animal's intentions, you'd call for an animal handling check. So, you know, let's say you found a wounded bear in the forest. Is it hostile? Does it like the man flesh, or the woman flesh in her case? Or is there a way that I could get up and help it? I'd say roll an animal handling check. Let's see how close this bear lets you get to it. How comfortable does it feel around you? You know, and can you tell if it's really hostile or not? So that's kind of a useful skill. It's very situational, but it kind of fits with what she's all about. Insight is a really great one. You see this a lot. Decides whether you can determine the true intentions of a creature, such as searching out a lie or predicting someone's next move. Doing so involves gleaning clues from body language, speech habits, and changes in mannerisms. So insight's cool. It's, you know, it's basically your lie detector, your innate lie detector. You know, that gut feeling. Is this person lying? Are they being truthful? You know, do I notice them sweating or shifting their weight or this, that, whatever? So insight's a pretty good one. She's not proficient in it, but she does have a +3 because her wisdom is +3, but she is not proficient in it. But it's a pretty good score, and it'll be a helpful skill for her as you go. Medicine lets you try to stabilize a dying companion or diagnose an illness. She's not proficient in that, but that's also tied to wisdom. The biggest wisdom skill of all is perception, and this is one of the most often used skills in the game, and we have made sure she is very perceptive. Lets you spot, hear, otherwise detect the presence of something. Measures your general awareness of your surroundings and the keenness of your senses. Try to hear a conversation through a closed door, eavesdrop under an open window, hear monsters moving stealthy in the forest, try to spot things that are obscured or easy to miss, like ambushers or people hiding in the shadows, etc., etc., etc. So your perception is your observational awareness ability, and she's pretty good. I'll play out an example here. Let's say Charlotta was basically entered into kind of a castle ruins in the middle of the forest, and she said, you know, do I see any traps or anything like this on the ground or this, that, whatever else? And I'll say, roll me a perception check. So in my mind, I'll say, let's set it at 12. So she rolls the dice. Rolls a 12, and she's got a +5, so that equals a 17. So she beat 12. So I say, you know, as you get closer to the middle of the room, you see leaves that seem out of place. And as you get closer, you can see that these leaves were used to camouflage and disguise a false floor. And at the bottom was a spiked pit. But you recognize it, you clear the way, you let your party know, and you can safely go around it. Stuff like that. It kind of ties into perception when you're kind of like generally looking for things or trying to notice stuff out of place. So that's really, really, really super handy. And I think last is, what is it? Survival. And so we made her proficient in survival down here at the bottom as well. And survival is follow tracks, hunt wild game, guide your group through frozen wastelands, identify signs that owl bears live nearby. Owl bears are a super cool monster in D&D. Predict the weather, avoid quicksand and other natural hazards. So survival is kind of anything pertaining to nature itself, you know, the beasts, the plants, stuff like this. If you're trying to track a gang of bandits that just ran away from town and took refuge in a forest, I would probably, as you try to track them, I'd make you roll a survival check. Like, can you find the tracks? And can you determine who they belong to and what direction they head into? And that's all going to be based on how well you roll when I ask for a check. So anyway, throwing a lot at you all. God, is there anyone even left watching this? God, that was an hour. I just went nonstop for an hour talking friggin' D&D. Lady Macbeth, beer chugging would be more proficient. Don't worry. I have definitely challenged people to ale drinking contests in character when I know that my character has a high constitution. You know, you don't want to be a lightweight challenging other heavyweights to a beer drinking contest because you'll get poisoned because you get so damn drunk. It happens. That's right. Sir Duvel definitely won a tavern ale drinking contest against other paladins in Horde of the Dragon Queen campaign I played with some friends a couple years ago. For sure. He won. And basically it was just a series of we just rolled constitution checks against each other. And whoever got the higher ones times, in 3 rounds won. And luckily I outrolled them. So I won the drinking contest. All the fun things you can do in D&D. But we have been going for about an hour here. So why don't we I'm going to call a little 5-10er, refill this water here, and then we'll move on to charisma, and then we'll get into some of this other nuts and bolts like the weapons she has, etc., etc., etc. And then I'm going to throw you onto, here's a little preview, the virtual tabletop. This is Roll20. I got a little map set up, so we'll get Charlotta on the screen, and we will have her rolling some dice and see if she can't take out a goblin or two. When we come back. So stay tuned for some hot dice rolling action. And if you got questions, put them in the chat. I'll try and check them out. Of course, I'll do a Q&A at the end and try to answer any questions y'all have, which might be numerous as well. And of course, let the D&D puns fly. I see it happening right now, and I absolutely approve of all the D&D dad jokes because this is life. Anyway, thanks everybody for being here. Give me 10. I'll be right back. And we're back, friends. Rocking my sweet custom Rachel made 'em Brandon and Beckett muggers. Why is it so dark? There we go. Let there be light. Let there be a light spell cast and shit. What'd I miss? Jared, 1991. What's going on, friend? Thanks for joining us here. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, D&D Beyond is free to join. There's certain subscription things, but it's less important unless you're gonna play more often, and unless you're gonna run games. I run games, so I subscribe, and you get a lot more bells and whistles and features and stuff like that as well. Drinking from the sniper mug. For those of you just tuning in, we're kind of like halfway through a stream. A lot of people are curious about my ridiculous D&D obsession, so I'm just kind of doing a bit of an intro to what it is, doing a little walkthrough. The chatters, decided that we would build a ranger from scratch, so we built a wood elf ranger named Charlotta, after our beloved Lottie, who was generous throwing some subs around earlier today as gifts. So it's a Lottie-inspired female wood elf ranger. So we're kind of walking through all these damned numbers that you see on the screen. There's a lot of numbers. I promise the math is never complicated. It's double digits tops, and you're adding very small numbers. It's easy enough that an elementary schooler could do it. I promise. And all these digital things make it super easy. Just click buttons and it does all the work for you if you ain't into math at all. Good point, Scarlett. To choose the character is half the battle. There's so many damn options, which makes it so customizable and fun. No two characters are alike, and it's all up to you, whatever you feel. Again, we're rocking here on D&D Beyond, which is kind of like the tool set of Dungeons & Dragons, official tool set of them. They make things really easy with the character sheets and rolling the dice for you and everything else too. Player's Handbook we went through is the kind of guide to getting stuff like that done. Dice is fun. I play in games where, they want you to roll physical dice and just tell what the number is on a total, honor system. Or obviously you can just use these kind of online web applications and they can just roll all the dice and shit for you, which is fun and typically the way that you do it. So, where were we? Let's dive back in, and I'll take some questions at the end here and see if I can't answer some more of the stuff for you all. But we're about to get into some fun stuff. Last thing we covered was like wisdom. Like, what does a wisdom score mean? She's pretty wise. And the last thing we've got here is charisma. So charisma is your ability to interact effectively with others. Such factors as confidence and eloquence could represent a charming or a commanding personality. So she's pretty charismatic. You know, she's got a +1 here. Her score is 13. She's a little bit more charismatic than your average person, which is pretty handy. You know, and that charisma mostly leans into the element. You know, I went over that there's 3 elements of D&D, and that's role play, your interaction with the other players, with people you meet in the towns, with your enemies, talking it out with them things. So there's a role play aspect to D&D. There's exploration, which is going across your maps and trying to get from point A to point B, and then there's combat. Charisma skills really tie into role play when you're trying to get information out of somebody, when you're trying to convince someone for a favor, or when you're trying to like deceive a guard to like let you into the town that you're not allowed into. So the charisma stuff kind of factors into that. So the skills associated with charisma, deception, whether you can convincingly hide the truth or verbally or through your actions, misleading others, or to outright lying to people. You know, your deception skills, you know, that's what this is going to entail. Fast talking a guard, con a merchant, earn money through gambling, pass yourself off in a disguise, blah, 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 blah. So this is kind of what the deception skill is all about. You know, if you want to try and pull a fast one on the guard, you'd go up there and you'd spin him a yarn, you tell him a bit of a story, and I might say, okay, it's a good story. Roll me a deception check. Let's see how effective your white lie was or your half-truth was. And then we'd let the dice determine if you were successful or if they caught on to you. Intimidation is a fun skill. You know, I play a barbarian in my other game, and he's very intimidating in terms of like his physical stature, but I also built him to have some kind of intimidation skills. You know, if I'm going to talk shit to an enemy, or if I'm going to try and cow a guard into letting us pass through force, by threat of force, I would call for an intimidation check to be like, can you scare this person enough to get what you want? That's a fun one to play, I'll be honest with you, in terms of role play, to be able to intimidate somebody. Influence someone through overt threats, hostile actions, and physical violence. Trying to pry information out of a prisoner. Intimidation is very good for interrogating. When you've captured a bad guy and you want some answers about his, his boss, or the BBEG, big bad evil guy, the boss you have to fight in the end. And a lot of fights can be avoided if you can basically intimidate somebody who's trying to jump you in an alley. You can intimidate them and maybe they piss off. So it's a really useful skill. I like to lean into that one. That makes role playing a lot of fun when you can lean into intimidation and know you can pull it off. Performance, how well you can delight an audience with music, dance, acting, storytelling, some other form of entertainment. Persuasion is a really useful skill that's used quite a bit in the game. Trying to influence someone or a group of people with tact, social graces, or good nature. You want to persuade them when you're acting in good faith, foster friendships, make cordial requests, or exhibit proper etiquette. You're trying to get what you want, but you're using honey. Whereas, intimidation, you're going to try and get what you want, but you're going to use the vinegar, and a sword. So that's what persuasion breaks down into. I gave her a proficiency in persuasion, so she's a little bit better at persuading than she is lying or intimidating, because it's such a great, useful skill. And, our Charlotta is a gentlewoman, and so she'd rather use the honey to get what she wants when she's talking to somebody. So that kind of breaks down the skills here. Again, the 6 main skills: strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma. Those are the main ability scores, and those are what those numbers are. Basically, anytime you see a plus, it means, if you're a 0, you're average. She's got a 0 average intelligence, and all these other +1, +2, +3, +4. The higher the plus, That's basically your way of knowing that, like, you're good. Oh, you're really good. Oh, you're well beyond good. You're the best. +4. You know, that just kind of tells you how great you are at that particular ability in that way. So let's get into the fun stuff. Weapons. Cool. All right. So weapons. We built her out to make her an archer, and so she's going to use a longbow. Longbow can shoot a little bit farther than a short bow, and that's what you want. The more range, the better. She can stay safe, you know, at the wood's edge and fire down into the road at the goblins, this, that, whatever else. So this is how the combat stuff breaks down. And again, you're going to use weapons when you're in combat. When you've got hostiles, when you're about to fight a gang or a group of something or someone, that's where, you know, well, we're getting out the daggers. You know, we're getting out the longbow, and we're going to settle this shit the old-fashioned way, you know, 10 paces at dawn style. So she rocks a longbow, and as you can see, you know, the longbow, she's proficient, which basically means she's pretty damn handy with it. She knows what she's doing. She knows her way around a bow and quiver. So she's going to get some bonuses because she is trained in that particular weapon. It's a ranged weapon, which means she shoots it from afar. You know, it's got a range of 150 feet. And this is the damage. Again, it all comes back down to die rolls, and I'll show you how that works in a second. But it's a longbow. It's two-handed. You know, bow, arrow, fire, that kind of thing. So she can't be rocking a shield and try to shoot a bow and arrow. She's got to use both hands to work the longbow there. So let's look at this here. So basically, and I'll get into the combat more about how this works, but if you look at the +6, right? So the +6 breaks down in the same way that it does before. She's proficient. She's got skills with the longbow in particular, so we get to add a +2. All right, and then longbow is a dexterity-based weapon. It's not a strength-based weapon, no matter what historical texts say. So she's got a +4 in dexterity. So the +2 and the +4, that's going to be a bonus for her to try and hit something with a longbow. And I'll show you how hitting things actually works. But it all rolls the same way. Let's say she's fighting a goblin, and their armor class, which I'll explain in a minute, is a 16. She has to roll a 16 or higher to actually make that arrow sing true, to have it land and actually do some damage. So let's just say that she's fighting an enemy, their armor is 16. Let's roll and see what she gets. All right, so she rolled a 14. She gets a +6, so that's a 20. She hits, and then we determine the damage. So a longbow is a pretty big, you know, hefty weapon. So the damage for a longbow is rolling a D8, 8-sided die, and then the +4 comes in here because that is tied to her dexterity bonus. So you roll to hit, and that's the D20, and you get to add your little +6 here. And then if it does ring true and you actually stick an arrow in that bastard, then you get to roll for damage. And again, everything works off these hit points. So what you're trying to do is, if you're fighting an enemy, you want to take whatever hit points they have, you want to drop them to 0. And you do that by doing damage. So you got to hit them with a weapon and see if the attack lands. And then you get to, if you do hit them, you roll the damage, which is a 1d8 +4. So let's just do that. All right, so she rolled a 2. So she does 2 damage +4 because she's got a +4 to her dexterity, and a longbow is a dexterity-based weapon. So that's how you determine the damage. She did 6 damage to this creature, which might be enough to kill it. Maybe not. But again, she can rock some short swords if things get up close and personal, and she swings those as well. They do a little bit less damage, but you know, she's built to be a ranged fighter. She doesn't want to be up in the front lines mixing it up, getting swarmed by enemies. She's not built for that. She wants to lean into her stealth. She wants to lean into her ability to be agile and nimble and dodge and stay out of danger and attack from afar. She's a backline fighter. If you think of, you know, any sort of medieval war scenes, you know, Bravehearts and movies like this, it's like, you know, you've always got the archers who stay in the back, and you've got the people on horseback with all the heavy armor. They're the ones who charge and mix it up. You know, that'd be your barbarian, your fighter, your paladin in D&D. But the ranger rocking a longbow is going to try to stay out of danger and just rain hell from afar. So that's kind of how that works in terms of the weapon she uses, why she's good at it, what those, dice rolls look like for her. And that's kind of like the simple breakthrough. I won't get into a bunch of the other stuff here. Walking speed, I'll tell you what that is. Armor class is kind of cool to understand. So if you remember at the beginning when we were, getting her geared up, she had a choice of chainmail, which is, heavier, clunkier, makes noise. But we said, you know what, we're going to go with lighter armor, keep her quiet in case she wants to stealth around and get the jump and the element of surprise working for her. So we put some leather armor on her. Doesn't offer a lot of protection. So this is what this number is. She's got a 15 armor class. AC is what that's called. And here's how we break this down. When she's wearing light armor like this, leather armor, it's an 11. It gives you this number 11, right? But she's also got her dexterity bonus. Remember, she's a +4 dexterity. All right? So because she's wearing lighter armor, it doesn't constrict your movement. She can still kind of depend on her ability to dodge and weave and whatever else because she's quick, she's agile. So you get to add your dexterity bonus. So the leather armor itself is a standard flat 11, and then she gets to add her +4 as her dexterity bonus, and that's going to determine what her armor class is. Her armor class 15. That basically means when an enemy attacks her, they have to roll a 15 or higher for the hit to land. So that's how combat typically works. You've got a weapon and you're proficient using weapons. You roll to try and hit an enemy. So the number you roll is compared against their armor class, and you have to match their armor class or roll higher, and that determines if you have a solid hit that does damage or not. That's kind of the fundamental breakdown of the things. So that being said, let me check in with the chat here. Y'all hanging along? Y'all going to sleep? I don't know why the light keeps dying here. What's going on? That's dark. Hold on. Let's go. I mean, really, it's not about me. It's about Charlotta. But let's see if we can let there be lights a little bit. Cool. Yeah, you can build your own character backstory. Someone runs the game and they say, hey, it's this kind of a campaign. We're going on this kind of an adventure. We're going to maybe go to that city. We're going to go to this part of that kingdom. And you can like weave a backstory. Like, I'm actually from these woods and, this, that, whatever. There's a million ways you can go. Backstory can be totally built out and you can create a whole backstory for your character. Sometimes it's less relevant for the game that you're actually going to be playing in. And I'll talk about that more at the end, like the types of games you can play in and stuff like that, games I've played in, etc. So let's have some fun. Let's get Charlotta on the friggin' combat board. Here we go. Who's this? I don't know what that is. All right, so this is what's pretty fun. I'll try and zoom in here a little bit. So this is a battle map, okay? Let's say Charlotta's been tracking, this goblin that was been, ripping off, some townsfolk. Let's just say this bastard's been stealing chickens. That's not a good representation of Charlotta. Let's find a better little piece of art. That's kind of fun. Ooh, look at her. We'll just go with this one. We'll make her the classic Arwen, Lord of the Rings kind of token here. We'll zoom in to give you all a better look. So this is kind of what it is. So like, these maps in general, whether you're printed out maps and playing in person or you're using the online, virtual tabletop stuff that's available to people to play D&D on, it's a top-down, topographical, 2D type of representation of things. And this is what's fun. It's like you can kind of see like there's a grid highlighted a little bit. And there's obviously all sorts of bells and whistles in these programs as well, including a measuring tool. So each grid, each little square in here is 5 feet, 5 feet of movement, okay? So these two are 30 feet apart. Here's Goblin, and this is Charlotta. They're 30 feet apart. You can measure the distance in the map any way you want just to figure out what's going on. Boom, boom, boom. How many squares is it going to take you to get to where you need to go in terms of strategic positioning and stuff like that. But to keep things simple, we're just going to have these two duke it the freak out and have a bow and arrow battle and see who the winner is. This is a character sheet for a goblin. Very handy, D&D Beyond, which is kind of an encyclopedia for all sorts of cool shit like this. And again, you can kind of see like Charlotta's got a super deep built out character sheet, very extensive with the skills and abilities and stuff. The goblin this is what I'm running. Okay, so if I'm the dungeon master and I'm running a game, and you know every player is in charge of their character, and so they rock their own character sheets and whatever else that they work off of. But I control the monsters, you know, and if they come across a band of goblins or orcs or what have you, I'm the one who has to play, you know, the monsters and kind of play them to the best of my ability and present the challenge to the players that they have to overcome. So this is the stuff I rock here. So these character sheets, these are all the skills and the stats that the goblin has. You know, armor class 15, you know, leather armor, and they rock a shield. They have only 7 hit points. They can move 30 feet in a round. I'll get into rounds and what that means once we get into combat. Not very strong. 8, -1. They are pretty dexterous because they're small and nimble. Not very hardy. Average constitution, average intelligence, not very wise. Not smart all the way around. You know, they're probably wise enough to save their own asses and run away if something's too hard, but other than that, they're not very smart. They're not going to have incredible combat tactics and stuff like that, and charisma is also very low. They're not very likable and don't have great social skills. And they have some other things here. It tells you kind of like what weapons they're equipped with. Like goblins generally rock a scimitar and a short bow. We're just going to have a little short bow battle here with them against Charlotta. So here's how it works when you go to and have some combat, which is, like I said, I could do a whole damn stream on combat. It's wicked fun. It's super cool. I use Roll20. As you can see, Roll20, when you roll the dice online, it'll appear kind of like in a chat. And so you can kind of track. You can track the things that are going on. You can track what the rolls are. You can track what the damage is. And you can kind of always go back and refer to things. You can type to each other, you know, in the chat. Hi. Bam, like that. Communicate to other players. So you don't interrupt the DM when the DM is talking. You can just kind of, you know, have a little chat open and the players can kind of talk amongst themselves, strategize amongst themselves, whatnot. So when a character and a monster is going to come to blows, we do, and it's a classic thing, maybe you've come across this in D&D, we say roll for initiative. Initiative basically is a turn order, determines who goes first, who goes last, etc., etc., etc. So we're going to roll for initiative as these two are about to enter combat. So we'll get a turn order up here, and this is how this works. Highlight the token, goblin. So everyone has an initiative bonuses that's usually tied to your dexterity. If you're generally faster and quicker, you're going to have a higher dexterity score, which is going to equal, you know, a higher initiative score. It means you have a better chance of going first if you're more dexterous character. And that's exactly what we've built her out to be. But the goblins are pretty dexterous too. So they got a little +2 bonus. And they rolled a 2, and they get a +2. I've got a special thing in here to determine tiebreakers. Don't worry about the decimal points. So the goblin rolled a 4. That is not very good. Chances are he is going to be going last, and that's good for our hero. So Charlotta, her initiative is +4 because that's all tied to her dexterity. +4 dexterity bonus, +4 to initiative. And we roll this. Woo! Not much better, but just enough. So she rolled the 3. She gets a +4. So she's rocking a 7. So there she is. She's 7. And so round 1 of combat. Here's the fun thing about combat. So basically it's like the Matrix, right? It's like watching a fight scene that all of a sudden goes down into slow-mo. So, you know, combats are measured in rounds. You know, once everybody takes a turn, that's the end of the round. We go into round 2. Everybody takes a turn in that order. Round 3, and so on and so forth, as long as you need until the battle is complete, or someone runs away, or everyone's dead, what have you. So a round is 6 actual seconds of real time. So there's not much you can do. You can move, you can try to attack, you can try to do this, that, whatever else. You can cast a spell, but you got 6 seconds, right? And that's kind of what each round is. That's what your turn is. It's 6 seconds. And so combat mechanics in D&D are kind of based around you're in a fight and things are happening quick. This is what you could reasonably pull off in 6 seconds time, you know, in a very, very, very like high stakes situation. So round 1 begins. Charlotta has a 7 and the goblin only has a 4. So Charlotta's going to go first, and we're going to keep it simple. We're going to take a shot with our longbow. So if you remember here, this determines the number to try and hit the enemy. And here we go. She only rolled a 7, but she gets a +6, so that's only 13. If we look on the goblin's stat sheet here, the goblin's armor class is 15. She's not going to hit. She rolled a 13. His armor class is 15. She's just short. So she misses. That being said, she says, oh shit, I missed. You know, before the end of my turn, I'm going to move. I'm going to make it harder for this thing to try and hit me. I'm going to keep some distance between us so it can't just run up on me. So she moves there. And that's her turn. And now the goblin gets its turn. And, it's fun to use the maps and like environmental hazards. It makes you kind of strategize and have to work around. So if you can see, she's within range of a short bow because he can shoot a short bow up to 80 feet away. So she's within range. However, she's kind of hiding behind these stones. So he's not going to be able to shoot through the damn stones and get a clean shot off on her. He only knows that she went around a corner and he can't really see her that well. So he's going to have to move. Boom. And now he can see her visibly, and he is going to take a shot with a short bow. So he's going to drop his shield and is going to two-hand a short bow and see if he can't hit Charlotta here. How'd you do, little gobby gobs? Ooh, 21. So he rolled a 17 and he gets a +4 bonus to try and hit her, and he hits her. Ouchies. So a short bow, it's not a strong weapon, it's only a D6 and he gets a +2 bonus. So let's roll the damage here. So he rolled a 1 and he gets a +2 bonus, so he does 3 damage. So he does 3 damage to Charlotta. Now Charlotta had 12 hit points, right? So she takes 3 damage. She's down to 9. When she hits 0, she's unconscious. Oh, what is even happening? Yo, stop. Just stop. Okay, we're not going to do it that way. All right, we'll go on her character sheet, and we're going to drop her down to 1, 2, 3, 9. So this is her hit points. You got to track those. She's currently got 9 hit points. Her maximum when she's fully rested and healed is 12. She took 3 damage. And this goblin is kind of cool. He's got a little feature here called Nimble Escape. And so he is going to, he's got a little bit of movement left. He's going to come down here and just kind of chill out of the way. And that's the end of its turn. So Charlotta's up. She's got, she was winged by an arrow. And this is what's fun as a DM, is you get to describe how they miss. You get to, determine based on the damage somebody did to somebody else, what kind of a hit was it? Was it a brutal hit? Was it just a scratch? That kind of thing. Did the arrow fly off into the bushes? That sort of stuff. And it's fun because you can add narrative and you can add description. And of course you can add music to your games and stuff like that to keep it more immersive. All these things, by the way, shout out to Diascast Gaming. We're going to have a live stream D&D coming at you. Hopefully we can put that in the chat. Twitch.tv/ I believe it's Diascast Gaming, or it could be the Diascast Gaming. I'll type it in there in a second. But we're going to be bringing this to you in real time so you can see it happening with people that are experienced and try to give you a really immersive, interactive showing of D&D here soon, coming up probably in April. Anyway, it is round 2. Charlotta fired an arrow and missed the goblin. The goblin, however, fired a short bow shot at her and hit and did 3 damage to her. She's down to 9 hit points. But she is staying calm, cool, collected, confident. She is going to return fire, and she is going to fire an arrow from her longbow. So we're gonna this button, see if she hits the goblin. So she rolls a 12, she gets a +6 bonus. Her total roll is an 18. The goblin had to drop a shield, so its armor class dropped down to 13 because it's using a two-handed shortbow. It can also hold a shield, so its armor class is only 13 now, and 18 most definitely hits it. And what is the damage that she does? She does 8 damage. She straight up shoots this goblin right through the friggin' face and kills it. And only had 7 hit points. She did 8 damage. Charlotta is the victor of this combat. That's a little breakdown how combat works, and I kept it simple and short and sweet. Obviously, you know, if you have a level 1 character, you've got less abilities to work with, but as you grow bigger, stronger, you get more abilities, you have more weapons options, maybe you start casting some spells and stuff like that to make things more interesting. But your enemies do too. So it's always kind of the back and forth and the give and take and the adjustments that you need to make along the way to try and survive each battle and to get stronger and more experience. So that was combat. Hopefully that was, you know, exciting. I know it was simple. But as you can imagine, you know, you're going to play D&D with friends. What is up with this light thing? I can't. Hold on a second. Maybe it's the sunset. Maybe it's some sunset. It's effing things up here a little bit. Okay. There we go. That's a little bit better. But you can imagine, you know, if I'm playing with Rachel and Scarlett and, you know, Tammy and whatever else, and we've got an adventuring party, it's like, you know, there's a group of 3 to 4 to 5, maybe sometimes 6 of us, and we're probably going to be fighting a whole gang of goblins. So there's going to be goblins all over the map, and there's us trying to coordinate as a team, trying to win the battle. It's really fun. It's really exciting. It's really dynamic. You know, sometimes people build characters that are all about helping their teammates do well, survive, heal them when they're hurt, you know, cast spells that give them bonuses and make them more effective fighters, and etc. And, you know, if you're fighting a pack of wolves, they have tactics that make each other better fighters and stronger when they stick together. So there's a lot of strategy involved, and it's wicked fun. The sheer amount of players and different types of characters you can rock and the type of monsters you'd face, like, it's never ending. It's super customizable, and it's a blast. So anyway, that's combat. That's how this all breaks down. And, you know, Roll20 is a really cool program, and it's probably the most popular program for playing D&D on. It's one I've learned and used since the beginning. As well, and, you know, there's just a lot of really fun bells and whistles you can kind of put in here. You know, you can even, it's even got a dice roller. You can just roll some dice onto the table here as needed. You don't have to work, you know, rock off the character sheet and stuff like that. So you know, that stuff's pretty cool too, and the chat feature and everything else too. So I'm a big fan of Roll20. I've been using it for all the games that I've run, and most of the games that I actually play in. So but this is fun, you know. I was gonna have another battle. Here's an orc, but we just took out a damn goblin, and that's kind of the character sheet for the goblin right there. And of course, we've got Charlotta here, and everything that she's about. And so there's a lot more stuff. Like, here's the inventory. Here's everything that she starts with, all of her equipment, her backpack, her torches, shovel, all her weapons, and everything else is on this tab. This is just a reminder of, you know, her special abilities and things that don't always have a lot to do with combat, but like as you're exploring, as you're role playing, these are good things to know when you need to go take a rest at the end of the day. How long do you need to rest for before you're fully recovered? It's called a long rest. You know, the description, she's the folk hero. That's kind of her little backstory we created for her real quick. So it's really, really fun in terms of hopefully giving you an idea of what this looks like. You know, how you get all these numbers, how are they generated, what do they actually even friggin' mean. This is just a little bit of a very, very basic primer for you, but I'll do more of these videos. I think it'd be fun. Maybe we'll take a vote and we'll see what character I build next. You know, I want to build a fighter, you want to build a barbarian, you want to see what cleric does, and you know, spellcaster type class, like a warlock or something like that. we can kind of play into more of those other characters that use magic and spells instead of just bows and arrows and swords and shields and stuff like that, and fight a different enemy. And maybe we could put Charlotta and give her a teammate. We can go 2-on-2 and fight a couple of orcs and see what the heck happens here. So it's fun. There's tons of stuff out there. You know, go on YouTube. There's so many amazing resources if you want to learn more, especially, you know, wonderful introductions that are probably way better than this for anybody who wants to get into D&D. General stuff, what's it about, how do I create a character? There's all sorts of stuff, you know, out there. I like the dungeon dudes, although they kind of get next level with stuff. But that's where I've kind of grown to as a player. You know, and like D&D itself, Wizards of D&D, DungeonsandDragons.com, DnDBeyond have so many great resources for beginning players and people looking to learn more. If you're ever interested in the different types of classes or a specific class like a fighter or a ranger, there's all sorts of videos. This is what a ranger is. This is how you play a ranger. Here are your options available to you. Here's what they're good at. Here's what they're not good at. That sort of stuff. So, but learn it and you know, read the player's handbook. You know, it's a dense tome, and it's mostly just like read through it once or as much as you can, whatever's relevant, and then you just kind of refer back to it. But I mean, look, half the book is just like, you know, just like friggin' lists of spells, you know, is half the book. It's like a little encyclopedia. So, you know, some of this stuff might not even apply to you. If you're playing a fighter, you don't cast spells. Like, you don't need to worry about a third of this book. So, but it's a cool thing, and then you can kind of obviously get the digital version for everything else as well. You know, people want to play in person. This is the starter set. Like, you can get it online or like on Target. It's like $15. It's amazing. Like, it's great. It's got like maps and deets. And I started out in person before the pandemic hit. So basic, so chill. You know, the little manual on how to run the game. It comes with a bunch of dice you can hand out to your players. But they're super cheap. I ran this one after. This is definitely available at Target. That's where I bought it. Essentials kit. It's another kind of like levels 1 to 5 beginners campaign. It's easy to run and a lot of fun. I'm currently running, the only game I'm running now is Curse of Strahd, which is more of a gothic horror, vampire in a castle type campaign, which is very classic D&D, which is really fun. You know, what I love about D&D is, you know, I'm a fantasy nerd. I love the characters, the art, the artwork. You know, this is like the map that came with Curse of Strahd. You know, if you can kind of see this here. Oh, that ring light's effing this up bad. But this is like the Valley of Barovia where everything takes place. And this is like a fold out in the handbook, you know, to run the game. And I'm like, this is so cool. I got to put this in a poster. And I got to frame it. And it just tells you the locations and everything else and kind of gives you a frame of reference for the world you're living in and playing in and stuff like that. I don't know that I have anything else to show off here. I've got D&D shit everywhere, all over this office. But any questions? Fire it up. I've got a few more minutes before I got to bounce. Happy to answer any questions. Again, no, you don't need to memorize this stuff from the start. You know, there's so many things out there that allow you to kind of like learn as you go if you ever want to pull the trigger. Some people have asked me, like, where can I get started? None of my friends play. I need to learn more. You know, the more you read, the more you're going to have a better idea. But, you know, just start playing. There's literally a site called startplaying.games. And a lot of the dungeon masters on there offer free intro to D&D sessions. Like, it doesn't hurt. If you have 2-3 hours, however they run it for, they'll walk you through, they'll handhold you through everything. They'll probably help you build a character. And just walk you through a little small adventure so you get your feet wet. I've seen those all the time on that great website. Some of them charge, some of them don't, but I play in 2 games through startplaying.games. I'm totally anonymous. Nobody knows who I am. I just go up and I just get my game on. Like, I'm just a player. One guy charges me $10 for a 4-hour session. The other dungeon master charges like $16. So I'm playing in 2 awesome, you know, D&D campaigns for, you know, under $26 a week, which is a bargain because each of the games are 4 hours long, and it's the best, and it's wicked fun. And that's a great site to go and find people to play with, dungeon masters who are running games. They're either free or very cheap in terms of what you get for entertainment value and like being taught how to play properly. So that's a great site. Yo, Kilton Beer, thanks for the Prime sub. Appreciate you. What's going on? I've never found this guy before. Calm, easy, polite explanations. Yeah, well, it's my first time trying to walk anyone through D&D outside of players in my own game, so hopefully this helped people kind of get a better sense and a better feel for how it all works, and what you'd be experiencing as a player a little bit. That's a very kind comment. Appreciate that. Before I go any further, though, I want to get my Die Is Cast Gaming Twitch channel there. I hope that link works. I can't remember if it's Die Is Cast Gaming or the Die Is Cast Gaming. You see me make some posts. We're going to do a live stream D&D campaign on Twitch. The channel is Die Is Cast Gaming or the Die Is Cast Gaming. Okay, I got it wrong. Thank you, Rachel. We're still building these things out. So you'll be able to come over there and watch us. You know, we're going to have the microphones and we're going to have the camera feeds. You're going to be able to see our characters. I'm going to do a lot of Q&A sessions and do a lot of stuff outside of actually playing the game, where I can answer questions and walk you through my character sheet and let you know what's going on with him. I'm going to play a paladin because it's just kind of my go-to class that I love the best. So please subscribe. If you're going to follow the socials for updates and stuff, you can meet some of my co-conspirators, Lindsay Russo, talented voiceover actress. Jakey Nunza is going to be our DM. He's a super experienced DM and a really cool guy. And we're getting some more players, involved as well. So we'll be live streaming some D&D for you. So you can kind of learn by watching or just be entertained AF. These are very experienced players. We're going to put on a hell of a show for you. And it's kind of a fun choose your own adventure book, but you get to go along on the ride for us. And look at that. Hey, Trevor, what's going on? No Fun Allowed. I was talking about amazing D&D content out there. No Fun Allowed, who I just did an interview with. He was kind enough to chat with me. That's Trevor. He's got a great YouTube channel. Like I said, I run Curse of Strahd, and Trevor's guides for a dungeon master trying to run Curse of Strahd are effing amazing. So I'm a big fan. Cheers to you, Trevor. Thanks for popping by, my friend. Check him out. He might have some stuff for players, although he might have stuff mostly for dungeon masters. And if he does, don't watch that. Because it's spoiler alerts everywhere. But anyway, if anyone has any questions, fire them off in the chat. I'll try to answer stuff for you. Like I said, D&D gets very complex and very layered as you go, as you decide. But in the meantime, you're rolling dice and it's simple math. Roll a number, try to hit things, or if you don't roll high enough, you fail. And that's basically what it brings down to. And then just, immerse yourself in a character. It's kind of like being an actor a little bit, but no stakes and just pure fun. And just, see what you come up with in terms of adventuring across the land. But come watch us, hopefully by the end of this month or April. We've just lined up a great technical director to add some bells and whistles and make it even more entertaining of a stream. So please follow and please stay tuned for more updates on when we'll be rocking the D&D live stream here soon. What else? I don't know. What class would you recommend for a brand new player joining an existing game? What would you say is the easiest to hit the ground running on? Shoot, No Fun Allowed. You can weigh in on this too. You're a super experienced player and DM. Honestly, I always find the martial classes to be easier. The fighters and the rogues, and even a ranger is probably easier for beginner. This is the first character I ever ran. I don't want to overwhelm myself with a wizard with spell books and all sorts of complicated shit. Just give me bow and arrow. Let me see if I can get the job done. Barbarian is a great beginner class. Paladin, this sort of stuff. Paladin does get to dip and play a little bit with magic, but not in an overwhelming fashion. You run up, you hit things. And I think that's a really great intro for people new to D&D. It keeps the mechanics simple. It keeps, your options are streamlined so that you don't feel overwhelmed and not knowing what to do because you have too much choice. So I've always preferred to play martial classes, the warriors, the fighters, the rangers, etc. I think that's maybe a little bit less complicated for beginning players. but that's not to say that you can't have fun out of the gates playing a wizard or a warlock or somebody that uses magic. You just might have to do a little bit more prep because you'll have a bunch more options available to you in terms of spells, and so it's just a little bit more homework. It's nothing crazy, but if you really enjoy it, you'll make the time for it, and it'll be that much more rewarding for you. Great question, Kilton Beard. Glad to have you here, by the way. Thank you. Angel got it. It's probably a ranger being. A ranger is good, and a ranger, can sit back and shoot a bow and arrow, or you can kind of build out a ranger to be up close and personal if you want. Each of the characters are really customizable. You can have a fighter that uses a massive two-handed greatsword, or you can have a fighter that's got a long sword and a shield, or you can have a fighter that's also, into archery. So it's so customizable along the lines in terms of any direction you kind of want to go. So, but a ranger's good, I feel like rangers and like a rogue is good because a rogue can just sit back and use a bow and arrow as well and stay out of danger. It keeps things pretty simple, pretty straightforward. But D&D 5th edition, does a great job of, as you get to level 2, they'll give you maybe an extra ability. As you get to level 3, you get another extra ability or two. So they do a great job of just kind of giving you more options as you gain more experience naturally, as you play the game more. So nothing is really overwhelming if you start at level 1, and which is always good advice for new players. Start at level 1. Warlock's cool. Sorcerer's pretty fun as well. I've never played a sorcerer. I have a paladin warlock multi-class, so it's a combination of the two that I'm having a hell of a lot of fun with in a campaign called the Dungeon of the Mad Mage that I play on Thursday nights, and I play that through the startplaying.games website. I found this game there. We're like 20 sessions in. It's effing amazing and fantastic, and I got lumped in with a group of strangers who've become great friends, and we have a blast every Thursday night. And it's $10 for 4 hours every Thursday night. It's honestly the best effing deal on the internet, is to go to startplaying.games and find a game to play in. And people there are just cool, and they're not making a fortune running these games for players. They just love D&D, and that's why they do it. And anytime you can get D&D on the cheap, you should absolutely pull the trigger if you have the time. Can you play on your own? You can play on your own. You'd be hard pressed to find someone to run a game for you where it's just you. Honestly, playing alone, there's a way you can do it. I wouldn't recommend it. It's so much more fun to play with other people. It's just such a blast, the way things turn out, the things you come up with together, and so much about D&D is collaboration. It's there's problems, you got to find solutions. Like, how can you work together? How can you lean into a certain character's skills? Maybe you can find a creative way not to fight, something, and to get them to surrender, or get them to run away, or this, that, or whatever. Bribe them. There's a million ways you can solve problems in D&D, and it's so entertaining to see how these things unfold when you work with your party and you kind of figure these things out. Who determines the hit dice? The hit dice are hit dice as in like to hit. Hit dice has a different meaning in D&D. Like the ranger has a hit die of D10. They're more of a stout character. They're a little bit tougher than most. And the hit die determines kind of your hit points, so to speak. Like a wizard or spellcasters are generally called squishy, as in they're much more prone to die from physical damage. The hit die is only a 1d6. And that determines kind of health, hit points, recovery. It's a little bit, it's like next level mechanic that I didn't get into in this stream. But the tougher classes have a higher hit die, and the more cerebral, brainy, intellect-based magic casting typically have a lower hit die, which basically means you don't want them getting smashed with a long sword. They will not last very long. They're not built for it. Cutie Vanessa Joy, I hope you got something out of it. It's cool. There's so many resources online, and it's easier to play now more than ever. It's awesome. It's really amazing. I never got to grow up playing D&D because I lived in a small town, know, and no friends that I knew played it, and the only way you could play it was in person with people back in the day. So I never got to play when I was younger. I'm making up for lost time now that things are digital and I'm in a bigger city, and I've met a lot of people who do love to play. So, yeah, we call it the pizza tax. I don't know what that is, but that's funny. I want to learn more about the pizza tax. Yeah, play with friends if you can. And again, they can be strangers. You know, I had the best time with these people that we all started off as complete strangers in the 2 games that I play through that website. And, you know, they're great. I look forward to them. We chat with each other on Discord, just kind of making dad jokes and nerding out about the games. Or, you know, we know we've got a week, and we've, you know, if there was left on a cliffhanger, we just shoot the shit about, like, how are we going to solve this shit? We got 6 days to have a plan and have it ready to go. So it's just so community building. This game lends itself to that, which is just a really fun component of this game, and a reason why I love it so much. Yeah, John's got some years. Look at that, Tammy. Your local library's got D&D classes for teens. That's radical. That's so fun. You know, it's being taught in schools now. It's an extracurricular activity in schools and everything else. It's just really cool. You know, I can see how it could bring kids out of their shells and help them learn kind of more, you know, cooperation, teamwork, team building, stuff like that. It's really fun. But it's like, you know, you're shooting bows and arrows and you're trying to kill a dragon every once in a while. It's like, what's not to love about that? I played a vampire. Scarlet. How long do the games last for each day? Typically, when I run a game, scheduling can be the hardest thing, which is why that startplaying.game site is so great, because the DM lets you know, hey, I'm going to run this game once a week, Thursdays, 4 o'clock Pacific time. If you can make it and that works for your schedule every Thursday, there's your deal, you know. So, but schedule does become tough, especially if you're trying to get everyone together in person. So the online stuff makes it a little bit more easy. I run games 3, you know, if we're kind of right in the middle of something, you know, maybe I'll stretch it for 3.5, 4 hours, obviously with an intermission kind of break in between. But typically you'll find that between 3 and 4 hours is a typical D&D session. You know, for instance, when I ran the campaign in the starter set here, it's called The Lost Mine of Fendelver, and it's a great intro adventure here. Takes you from level 1 to level 5. A really fun progression, a really fun story. I think I ran 20 to 25 3-hour sessions. So it's a commitment, it's an investment. That's not a particularly long campaign, but you know, if the party is slow, if the party is learning, and I play with a lot of players who are still learning, so things went a little bit slower. But if you have a party that's experienced, knows what you're doing, like, you can crank through stuff a lot faster because you understand how the games work. You can kind of streamline it a little bit, but 3 to 4 hours per session is typically what you can expect at one of these things, and it'll be time that just flies, as you can imagine. Time will fly at the D&D table. Seriously, Trevor, I wish I grew up with D&D too. I might be a totally different person if I did, though. I should, yeah. I might have, like, got so into D&D if I was a kid that I just never would have played sports ever. But I'm kind of very grateful, even with all the injuries later, that I had that team sports experience. That's right. Our character is Charlotta, named after our beloved Lottie, who was very generous with throwing around some gift subs earlier in the stream. So we built a female wood elf ranger today, named Charlotta. She did well. She killed the goblin. She won. Yeah, Julia, I get it. You know, D&D's become much more of a global game that I've seen, but obviously, it can be language heavy. You know, there's a lot of talking and a lot of problem solving involving talking and stuff and communicating with each other. So I get how that could be a bit of a barrier. You know, but it seems like your English is fantastic. So there's no reason why you couldn't hang with something that happens in an international game. Like the game I'm in, we have a player from Australia, a player from the UK. You know, if you can make the time zone thing work, you know, you can play with players from all around the world, which is just a blast. It is time consuming. You do have to plan it for sure. You know, 3 to 4 hours, you know, it's a bit of a commitment, but like I said, the time's gonna fly. So as long as you have the time, it's great. But I'm like, I know people who spend 20 to 30 to 40 hours, you know, playing Call of Duty. You know, it's like whatever you're into, you know, you'll find the time for it. So anyway, I'm trying to find any other questions here before I gotta log off and eat because my stomach's growling. You're gonna be able to hear it soon. Yep, there's a starter set on Amazon. Again, you know, you don't have to buy the starter set. The starter set is basically for the dungeon master. So it's who's going to run the game. So it's not as useful for players. I guess I should have said that from the beginning. But I ran the game, so I bought the starter set because it gives you, it gives you the campaign guide. It walks you through the adventure. It gives you some maps and some dice that people can throw around. And the physical copies are meant for getting together in person. But you can buy the starter set off Roll20 and have all the maps ready, all the creatures lined up. Obviously, you can roll all the dice on the Roll20 website, the web app as well. So that's so much better. But again, you don't have to own the adventures if you're just going to be a player. In fact, I'd recommend not owning or buying or reading the adventures in case you actually want to play in it one day. You don't want to know what happens. You don't want to have all the spoilers kind of revealed. I only read the adventure books because I run the games, because I always want to leave it open to play in some of the adventures, so I don't want spoilers in case I ever get a chance to play something fun. D&D event happening in the UK. Yeah, there is. There's lots going on there all the time. Time zones can be an issue for sure. Strahd campaign's going great. Just trying to get things back together with my group. I'd say we're just about at the halfway point. They messed Strahd a couple times. The big bad evil guy. BBEG as we call him. But they still got quite a bit to do before they find themselves in Castle Ravenloft, which is where the Vampire Lord of the Kingdom resides. Super looking forward to that. Trevor can probably let you know, no fun allowed here. He's got these great guides for running the Curse of Strahd campaign and many other campaigns, and it's like he had to do like 8 to 10 videos just getting you all the way through Castle Ravenloft. It's effing massive. Castle Ravenloft is so big. I'm sort of intimidated having to keep track of everything, running my players through all the different levels and towers and the dungeon and the basement and the crypts and the this and that and the whatever. But it'll be a fun challenge I look forward to when my players get there, if I don't kill them first with some challenges. No one's died yet. I did have a player go down in Curse of Strahd, my good friend Bert. There was a gasp and everybody went silent, of course, but there's a feature in the Curse of Strahd campaign that lets you take a dark gift that'll bring you back to life at low levels, but you're kind of cursed in a weird way if you do it. So he took a dark gift and he has no face. He has no mouth. He has no mouth. So he has to communicate telepathically, and he can't eat or drink or anything else. So it was like, welcome back from the grave, buddy. You should probably wear a bandana over your face so as not to terrify everyone. Oh boy, let's see, what else? Yeah, Van Richten's guy was cool, John. Thanks again for sending that, man. That's super cool. Van Richten's a really cool character at Curse of Strahd. And so it's cool that they had a spin-off book of resources and stuff that they introduced under that kind of character's lore. Oh yeah, Trevor, there he is. No fun allowed. He's weighing in on Castle Ravenloft. It was a nightmare. Yeah, you should see the map for this place. Like Castle Ravenloft is stupid. It's huge, and there's like tricksy portals and tricksy things that go on that like take people here and throw them all the way over there, and you're like, oh my god, and you're going through your books trying to figure out where the hell do they end up, and it's a lot to manage. But it's classic. Like you say, Trevor, it's been around since like the early 80s. It's spun off novels. It's been a classic D&D campaign, and it's probably still one of, if not the most popular campaign in D&D all times, which is why I want to run it. It's a tough thing to run, but it's a lot of fun to get people together and do it. I gotta watch the time here. I think I'm missing dinner. Yeah. There we go. Bounce and get some dinner. All right. I don't see any other questions. So, yeah. Anyway, I'll do more of these. I love this, and I once we fire up the Dice Cast gaming stream, I'll do more. Well, we've got a professional technical director who's doing overlays for us and everything else, so these things will be smoother. I just wanted to get this out here for you all. I know it's crude. I just cobbled this shit together myself, and it looks completely amateurish, but I figured, you know what? It's not about the vanity. It's about Charlotta and stepping into her world. So hope you enjoyed it. Hope you guys learned a little bit more. I know it can seem very intimidating because there seems to be a lot of rules and mechanics and all sorts of fun stuff, but just take it one small piece at a time, and then you kind of expand your understanding as you go. So hopefully this did the trick for you as a little bit of an introduction to a game that I love, and hope to play for the rest of my life in bigger and better ways. So anyway, everyone who's over in the UK and international, thanks for staying up and checking it out. Anybody who missed it, spread the word. I think Twitch stuff stays up for like 7 days, but maybe I'll try and grab this and put it on YouTube so it'll live longer for anyone else to catch it and whatnot. So more great D&D stuff coming. The Dice Cast Gaming on Twitch. Hopefully we have some more updates on that coming soon. I've been doing some fun interviews. I just did one with the official D&D podcast. That was a great chat with them about my career in D&D and the stream I have coming up, and some more details that I could share on that. Hopefully we'll have a launch date at the end of March or early April that I'll be able to let you all know about. And I got some movie news coming around the corner. Still waiting to hear on some stuff. I can't say anything until I get the word from the top brass, but that should be coming pretty soon, if not this week, then next week and stuff like that. So subs, resubs, the bits, the gift subs, thanks so much everybody. I hope you're just as excited about D&D and learning more. We'll do more of these, but I'll let you know, and hopefully sooner rather than later we can dive into some other things with D&D and teach you a little bit more about this sort of stuff before we kick off our live stream. So anyway, have a good rest of your night. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.